The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Starquest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the Fourth Doctor story, The Seeds of Doom. I said I was going to do it, and I did it.
There you go.
Joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
Howdy, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Hello, Dom.
Folks, be sure to join the StarQuest fan club by texting StarQuest to 66866. That's StarQuest to 66866. And also check out another show that we have on the network. And I hesitate to call it a show because it is Pray Station Portable. This is not a show per se. It's a prayer opportunity. It's the Liturgy of the Hours of the Divine Office of the Catholic Church that calls you to prayer several times a day. And it's a very nice podcast that we've been doing for over a decade and a half. So check it out at sqpn.com or wherever fine podcasts are found.
So, Dom, I have a question.
Yes.
So you said people could text StarQuest to a number to get on our mailing list, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, when they do that, do they text StarQuest as one word or two?
Oh, that's a good point. It's one word, StarQuest.
Okay.
StarQuest.
just so folks know.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. I should make sure that I put that in my script so that I will say that in the future. So StarQuest is one word, in camel cased, which is where there's the capital letter in the middle.
Does it need to be camel cased for this to work? We should test that.
I will test it. Probably not. I'm going to guess that it doesn't. Okay. It would be really dumb if they programmed it to be camel cased, so, but for capitalization to matter. In any case, let's talk about the Seeds of Doom. Jimmy, can you give us a quick recap of this episode?
This week, Doctor Who again does H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness and Howard Hawks' 1951 film The Thing from Another World. The Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane head down to Antarctica, where a 20,000-year-old pod from outer space has been discovered. Unfortunately, the pod has infected a guy and is turning him into a world-destroying plant called a crinoid. Also, unfortunately, he dies, but there is a second pod, and an eccentric, amoral millionaire British botany fan has sent two goons down to Antarctica to steal it for him. They do, and they bring it back to his country manor house in England, where it proceeds to infect his head botanist guy, who also starts becoming a crinoid. The Doctor is very concerned because if the crinoid germinates, it will shoot out hundreds of baby crinoid pods and irretrievably infect the Earth, leading to the death of all animal life, including humans. And the crazy botanist has become even crazier, gone full native, and now believes himself to be a plant and wants all the animals to die. At the last minute to save the day, the Doctor actually calls in a unit airstrike to destroy the now giant crinoid plant octopus monster, causing the Third Doctor to turn over in his grave. The end.
So, a couple of thoughts. First, this is the last major unit story. So the last story where unit plays a major role until the episode we recently talked about, the Seventh Doctor's Battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the last time we'll see Unit for a while. And also, it has no Brigadier, no Benton from Unit. So they're gone now.
We finally get to see some other Unit officials that we don't really even hear about. All of a sudden, they're just created because I'm sure probably the actors weren't available or something.
Yeah, and we do hear about the Brigadier. They mention he's in Geneva during the story, so That's why we have other people.
Yes, but we don't know where Benton is, probably on leave somewhere. The other thing is the millionaire botanist, Harrison Chase. Do you know how he's a bad guy?
He's wearing gloves constantly.
Yeah. He's wearing black gloves all the time for no apparent reason, which is clearly the sign of a bad guy in the 70s and 80s. That's just,
Also, I know he's a bad guy because he's hiring people to commit murder and stuff like that.
Oh, well, I suppose that too, I guess, if you have to be technical about it. So it's an interesting story because it's the guy who becomes so enamored of vegetation that he identifies as a vegetable or a plant. This could almost be a story you could put out today, although they never would with Doctor Who, the current Doctor Who. But it is almost a story. These sorts of ideas of identity and climate change and
I see what you
saving
mean.
the plants and that sort of thing.
I identify as a plant instead as a person.
Yeah. His conversion to plant mentally, because he does not become a crinoid, he remains physically a human.
Right.
And it's a little confusing what his exact relationship is with the plant world at the end, because the way they start portraying it, I mean, there's a visual hint on screen that suggests he's fallen under the mental influence of the crinoid. And that apparently is what happens, though initially it's more like they play it more like he's just had a psychotic break. And that's what Sarah Jane's initial theory is he's just gone crazy. He's had a psychotic break. He's not thinking clearly. But the doctor suggests he may be possessed. And based on the visual hint they give, there is some kind of apparent mental influence that the crinoid is having over him now. And it's unlike anybody else, it's not trying to kill him. The crinoid is trying to kill everybody else, but it's not trying to kill him. And exactly what his role is supposed to be in this new order is not very well thought out, because he views all animals as, I don't know if
parasites.
I don't know if he says cannibals, but he at one point says all plant eaters must die. Well, then what are you going to eat? Because if all the other plant eaters die, you're not going to have any meat to feed on. So I'm not clear what his long-term role in this is supposed to be, but he does talk about how having become part of this plant world now. Yeah.
It's an interesting character. And there are two basic locations that we go from, and they kind of do it well. So we have the Antarctica base, and we have Chase's country estate. Yeah.
So we have 2 bases under siege, or 3 if you count the cottage they're trapped in for a while.
Right. Yeah. So it is definitely a base under siege sort of story.
It also taps very much into 1970s stuff. So, for one thing, I've commented, and others have too, about how Doctor Who likes to take ordinary things and try to make them scary. The Weeping Angels being an example of that. Or, the Vashta Nerada, the things that hide in the shadows. Well, here we have not just statues or shadows being scary, but plants, because normally, what do you do if a plant tries to kill you? Not even be aware of it. Yeah.
Right.
And if you did become aware of it, you could just run away and the plant can't follow you. So this is an early attempt of taking something utterly mundane and trying to make it scary. But it also fits in with a lot of stuff that was going on in the 1970s, because this was the decade that gave us the secret life of plants. The idea that plants are secretly much more than we think they are. People were talking to their plants. That was supposed to be good for them. They were playing music for their plants. That was supposed to be good for them. They were hooking up lie detectors to plants. That was supposed to be showing that they were telepathic. And all kinds of interesting plants are more than we think stuff that's playing into this episode.
Right. Yeah, and at one point, Chase plays this awful screeching music for the plants to help them grow.
The hymn of the plants, yeah. And it is this like screeching electronic music that has no beat and you can't dance to it.
Yeah.
It's very 70s.
And a requiem as well. And a requiem for the plants.
Yes, that's true. Right.
Actually, the requiem was actually for Linnaeus, so it was like for a biologist.
Right. The guy who gave us the classification for species.
Yeah.
So
mentally, I couldn't help glossing this one as Doctor Who versus Biollante, but I don't. Most people don't know their Godzilla canon well enough to fully appreciate that. Probably.
There you go. Yeah, no, I don't know that one. The other major player in this is something called the World Ecology Bureau, which apparently is another part of the UN. And their task, they're kind of like the EPA for the world, I would guess. They're all about saving the environment.
Sure.
From then, I guess. The UN, it's very interesting how, again, it's a very 70s thing that the UN was the ultimately, from that viewpoint in the 70s, was the ultimate end. Like, we were going to all unite under this one world government that would provide defense and take care of everything. Very
much the hope at the time. And I mean, that's what led to the EU, because the idea was the EU, I think, eventually would become part of the UN officially as a sub-organization.
Right. And we see that over and over again in Doctor Who of this era from the 60s and the 70s, this idea. Apparently we all gave up on that one a while ago. Which is probably just as well.
Well, there are people who claim that High Muckety Mucks are still after this. The alleged plan was like hatched at the Club of Rome quite a while ago. The idea was unite the individual regions of the Earth into sub-regions, like all of Europe is one nation now, and then unite all of the sub-regions together, and you have a planetary government.
Right. It just, you kind of see the hints of the mindset, the thinking in Doctor Who of this era with UNIT and this World Ecology Bureau.
By the way, this is a 6-parter.
Long.
Yeah, but it moves fairly quickly. It's a little padded in the middle, but it seemed to move fairly quickly.
Well, splitting it to this big Antarctica set piece and the England set piece really helped. I mean, it really almost was 2 stories. In 2 parts.
What I hate to say is once the Crinoid actually showed up in his full form, that's when it kind of that was the end of the 4th part, and then it just kind of dragged a little bit. I mean, again, you had let's blast it with our laser that looks like a floodlight on a bazooka, and
your RPG floodlight. There was a lot of running about corridors the last couple episodes. They could have conflated that into 5 parts, but I'm going to guess that 6, they needed to be some even number or something along those lines.
Well, yeah, and in fact, this whole thing was written to fill a slot in the schedule because they needed a season closer story for this season, and they had originally been going to use a story called The Hand of Fear, which is the Eldrad Must Live story, but they had script problems with that one, so they pushed that off till next season and hastily got the guy to write this, who did end up writing it. And it's like, can you do something for us really fast? And for something done on the quick like that, I think this turned out pretty well.
This is one of my I can't say favorites, but it's one of the ones I remember from the 4th Doctor from watching him as a kid. You know, it's definitely memorable, and it's not a bad story by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh no,
I remember watching it as a kid in the 70s as well. It's not one I've rewatched frequently, though. I think this may be the 2nd or 3rd time. I think this is the 3rd time I've seen it over the last ever.
Yeah.
But so it's not one that I would go back to a lot, but knowing how it was written, it's like, okay, that's not too bad for something they pulled together at the last minute.
And they have a vast cast. I mean, there's an immense cast.
I know. I have that in my notes. Unusually large cast, and I think in part because it's a 6-parter and it's got those 2 sets.
Right. You got the guys in the Antarctic base, the 3 scientists who all were very interesting individuals. You know, they were distinct, and they had, you know, for the short amount of time that they were on screen,
you could tell by the different colors of their fake beards.
Yes. Were they fake? Oh, maybe they were.
I'm pretty certain they were.
Yeah, they were.
You can tell.
Yeah. There's definitely, as I think you mentioned, there was definitely a feel of The Thing, that famous movie. A little bit of Alien, which obviously postdates this, but where the seed pod opens and the creature comes out, was felt very Alien.
Yeah, it's instead of being a face hugger pod opening thing, it's a wrist hugger pod opening thing. The pod opens just like it unfolds, and this spastic tentacle looking thing comes out and slaps around a person's wrist and infects him.
Yes. Yeah. And that was very interesting. And there's a rapid transformation that takes place. Speaking of rapid, the Doctor and Sarah Jane, are sent to Antarctica, and they get there really fast.
And not by the TARDIS either.
No, it takes a long time to fly to Antarctica from anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. Because there are several steps you have to take, but they compress it all. Of course, I mean it's TV, can't drag it out. But there's a lot of interesting elements there. One of the things that comes up is the Doctor wants. Yeah, Jimmy, you get.
Well, they could have gotten to Antarctica a lot faster if this was set just a few years later in the time of the Seeds of Death, because the Seeds of Death is a second Doctor Who serial set in the early 21st century, where they have a teleportation system that's based on the moon, but connects various points on Earth. And the Ice Warriors, it's the second Ice Warriors appearance. The Ice Warriors hack the teleportation system so they can transport the Seeds of Death, not the Seeds of Doom, to different points on Earth. So if this had just been conflated with that, they could have gotten there much quicker, and we could have had the Ice Warriors too. That
would be awesome. So when they get there, they see the guy's infected, and the Doctor is kind of at a loss. He recognizes it's the crinoid, this galactic weed that travels from planet to planet, and he knows the danger. And the idea he comes up with, we have to amputate the guy's arm, which was where the infection began, and that may save him. And they don't have a doctor or surgeon there. They have these scientists, and they turn to the zoologist and say, well, you're the most qualified. You can amputate his arm. And I'm like, I'm not sure just because he's a zoologist, which I'm not sure why you have well, you might have, there might be some animals around there. But why you would say a zoologist would have any qualification for doing a successful amputation. You might as well just kill the guy while he's there.
He understands animal bodies, how animal bodies are put together, and he knows how to use a scalpel. That's literally what they say in the plot.
Yes, that's about it. I'm not sure I would.
And eventually they convince him to do it, because the guy's gonna die anyway if they don't. They may as well try. And so I like the fact that they convince the zoologist guy to try. But why does it take the Doctor so long to think of that? That should be like the first thing. Oh, he's already 90% plant. Let's cut his arm off immediately.
Yeah.
Right. That's obviously where it has begun. Although by the time he's so much a plant, and the Doctor admits this is a last ditch sort of thing to try to figure out, because it probably won't work, but it's the only thing I can think of. It doesn't actually happen because
the crinoid gets up and kills the guy who would otherwise operate on him.
Yep.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Scorby, who's the heavy, the hitman, the mercenary who works for the millionaire Harrison Chase, and his botanist Keeler, they've shown up under false pretenses. And I like the fact that they're planning to take the seed pod by force and to kill the others, and they're not even aware that everything has gone out of control at this point. Like outside the room where they're sitting, the Doctor and the remaining scientists and Sarah are all running around trying to chase down the crinoid, and it's just like it's crazy pants. And they're like, well, we're gonna get this gun and we're going to shoot them. Like, dude, it is way past that point for you. And I like that the way they wrote that in there. They kept that going.
Yeah, as Keeler, incidentally, is very hinky about all this. Scorby is the one that's like, okay, we're going to kill these people. And Keeler is like, what? We're going to do what? No, we're not going to do that. Let's try to do this other, less deadly thing instead. And so Keeler is clearly not the hardened criminal that Scorby is. I really like Scorby's character because he's got, unlike many goons, he has a character arc. Mm-hmm. And by the end of it, so he slowly gets educated to the fact he's working for a crazy man, right? And comes around. And initially, he doesn't care that he's working for a crazy man. He says, and this is based on an actual quote, although the Doctor gets it wrong, he attributes this quote to an American humorist. It is not, but it is based on a quote of when it comes to money, everyone is of the same religion. And Scorby says, well, I don't care how crazy this guy is. When it comes to money, he and I are of the same religion. And so all he cares about is the money. But he also, it turns out, cares about his life. And so as the crinoid on the English country manor becomes more and more deadly, he starts to turn around, and there's a great bit where the Doctor has gone to warn the people at the World Ecology thing and call in unit. And he's talking to Sarah, but he's left Sarah Jane at the base, at the country manor, to serve as a liaison. So he can coordinate with her. And so he calls her on the phone, and she and Scorby have been arguing, but Sarah Jane has like cowed Scorby into doing what she wants. And the Doctor says, "How are things going with Scorby?" And she's like, "Oh, we're great friends." And he says, "Really? Well, uneasy allies."
Yeah.
But he does eventually turn around. Unfortunately, he loses faith in the Doctor because he thinks they're all going to die. And he thus runs out of the house, and all of the potted plants they've put up against the doors of the house are now like wailing on him, and he manages to burst through them. And so you'd think he's safe now, but he's like stumbling around by himself on the country estate and falls into a pond. And I'm thinking, oh, there are some vines in this pond. He's going to have to now pretend to wrestle with them like Bela Lugosi with the fake octopus at the end of Bride of the Atom, and it's going to look really terrible and fake. But no, instead, out of the water comes this huge, enormous mass of greenery that grabs him and drags him under. So he didn't have to pretend to wrestle with limp vines. They actually set something up that would grab him, and that was great.
Yes. It smothers him. Yeah.
Yeah, it even kind of looked like a hand coming out of the water and smacking down on top of him. It was actually pretty impressive.
That was pretty good. There was a lot of decent special effects for this period. Both the country manor house explodes at the end from the airstrike, which was pretty cool. The F4 Phantoms come in, and they had some stock footage of that. But then the Antarctic base exploding. So they had models for both, and they had this giant crinoid model. There was some pretty decent special effects. They were dramatic. I would have to point out that this experimental fuel cell at the Antarctic base, probably bad idea. Let's not do that at any other bases.
If it's a half a mile away and blowing it up causes your base to blow up as well, a half mile away, there's problems.
Yeah, let's go back to the drawing board on that fuel cell. Also, when the Doctor goes to the World Ecology Bureau when they get back from the Antarctic, he's trying to motivate these bureaucrats and politicians, and he says, "If we don't find that pod before it germinates, it'll be the end of everything. Everything, you understand? Even your pension." Which is that now he knows how to motivate bureaucrats. That was pretty good. Speaking of, we were talking about Chase and how he's a bad guy earlier. He also monologues a lot. Before he kills, which lets the Doctor escape not once, not twice, but like multiple times.
Yep. He also has blunted emotional affect, so like people will be saying things to him that are really important, and he's just got this wide-eyed, I'm going to monologue and I don't care thing going on.
Right. Also really bad at his job. Scorby is actually, for a killer, mercenary killer, I don't know how many times he tries to kill the Doctor and fails. Like he also a lot. There are like multiple times.
Yeah, I almost put it in my notes. Doctor, when you've disarmed people and rendered them harmless for the moment, take their guns.
Yes.
Because he keeps it like twice. The Doctor punches someone out and just leaves them with their gun. It's like, no, if you punch someone out and cause them to collapse in pain, take their gun with you. Even if you're not going to use it, take it away from them.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention it, but now that you mentioned the guns, I think you both have some small experience with small arms.
Mm-hmm.
The way Scorby kept holding his gun, did that bother either of you? Because it was bugging the heck out of me. Because not only did he have poor trigger discipline, he had his finger on the trigger all the time. He did this thing where he was gripping it with only his forefinger and thumb, and left his three other fingers kind of pointing outward. Like,
what,
dude? If you
kind
it was
kind of like a teacup hole. You're thinking like,
there was this weird way of holding it, and I'm like, dude, you are obviously not someone who is like the actor, is someone who's ever held guns before.
He is a British actor, so
yeah.
Right. It's a small thing. I just kept. I wasn't going to mention it until you mentioned the gun thing.
Admittedly,
But,
I never
yeah.
noticed it, but yeah, that would be. Go ahead and try to fire a weapon like that, a handgun like that
Yeah.
once, and see what that does. Not going to
But you
turn
might
out
get a-
well.
Broken nose when it hits you back in the face.
You can see YouTube videos where people do stuff like that, where they've got a weak grip on a fairly powerful firearm, and it comes right back in their face.
What I noticed with a lot of these guns is how dainty they are. They're like, I mean, there is such a thing as what's considered a woman's gun because
Right.
women's hands are typically
Generally
smaller and less muscular than men's, and so their women's guns have less of a kick to them.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, in not just in this, but in a lot of British television from this period, like The Avengers or Bond movies or things like that, which is not television but is still from this period. You have people using these men using these really dainty small guns. And I'm not sure why that is, if they were popular at the time, or if they're thought to be more easily concealable, but it is something I've noticed. They're not what I would want.
I mean, the concealed issue is the one I would think of in real life why you'd want a gun like this, because I know people who have smaller firearms for the purpose of concealed carry, and they're generally, but they're usually not dainty though. They're just usually smaller barrel, maybe less rounds in the magazine and so on. But
Bond carried a Walther PPK, which is a small. That was the small one.
Speaking of dainty guns, I don't know if you've ever read the original Life magazine version of, but since we're on a story involving space pods and people turning into things. In the original Life magazine version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the pods lose. And the reason they lose is one of the characters is able to contact the FBI and bring him in. And the narrator, who is a first-person narrator, so he's one of the characters in the story, talks about the FBI swooping in on the town and arresting all the pod people with their dainty machine guns. And he's they're carrying dainty machine guns. Really? Okay.
I'm not sure that's the word you wanted to use there. That is funny.
It's the one Jack Finney did use.
Wow. That's interesting. You compare the Bond carrying the PPK versus another contemporaneous American, which was Dirty Harry, who carried a 44 auto mag, which is a giant weapon.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting difference between American and British, depiction of action heroes, and that's
and that's like a 44 is what I would want. I mean, I've used 9mm a lot, but even a 9mm. I mean, the reports I have from people who've used them in combat is that even a 9mm does not have the stopping power you want. That you really want a larger caliber if you can use it.
Right. Like the old Colt 1911 45.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's been Secrets of Gun Talk. So let's talk about this. So Keeler, who's the botanist, is the we mentioned before, is the second guy to get infected, and Harrison Chase is so creepy, no pun intended, as he no, I'll help you change. This is all for the better. And poor Keeler is like, no, get me help. And it's just so awful. And then there's the butler. This is the other character I want to mention, the butler Hargreaves, who kind of goes along with everything. And I'm like, why is Hargreaves okay with all of the cuckoo crazy stuff that Chase is doing? He's just a classic, the butler manservant.
He even asks it as they're leaving the house, is like, are you really sure we're doing the right thing? This might be dangerous for him. And that's literally the only questioning he does of Chase in the entire episode.
Yeah. Of course, he dies. The butler dies because
the butler didn't do
everybody dies. Yeah.
Well, and the butler at least does try to challenge him a little bit, but I don't think I think like Scorby, the butler does not have the full picture of what's going to happen here. And he's principally concerned with money, and he's amoral, but if so, they've got Keeler in this place, and his boss is saying, I'm going to take care of you, don't worry.
Yeah.
are you going to call the police in at this point? And, you know, maybe you're going to cut your boss some slack in terms of he's saying he's got this under control, so maybe he does.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But he does come to a bad end, smothered by plants in the greenhouse. Another character who actually might be my favorite guest character is Amelia Ducat.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
She is so fun. She's this artist who does botany painting, and she shows up and she ends up going undercover for the World Ecology Bureau to help them get into the estate and find out what's going on with the doctor and Sarah Jane. Well, and she has so many great lines.
Yeah. Also, and I thought so they do something with her name that is famous on another British show called Keeping Up Appearances. Yep. But I checked, and yeah, Keeping Up Appearances was in the 90s, so it was 20 years after this.
Yeah.
But her name is spelled Ducat, and like the unit of money in some European nations. And so the doctor initially, more than once, pronounces her name Ducat. But then, yes. But then it's like, oh no, it's Ducat. and that is very similar to, I think it's Frances is her name, but there's a character on Keeping Up Appearances. Her name is Frances Bucket, but she wants it pronounced Bouquet.
It's Hyacinth.
Hyacinth, that's it. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Bouquet residence.
So she has, yeah, go ahead. A lot of great lines.
Yeah. Even her husband says, well, I always pronounced it bucket until I met you.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, yeah, she goes, Amelia Ducat goes undercover at different points. She claims, and it's apparently true, that Chase bought this painting from her and never paid for it. Like this millionaire guy who apparently has unlimited resources, you know, would be a billionaire today, never paid her for this painting she made for him.
That can happen with, that's how sometimes they get to be super rich.
Exactly.
They don't always pay their bills.
They don't spend money. It's not that they've earned money by being, you know, great famous people. They just don't spend money, and so they keep all their money. They hoard their money.
Right.
Also, she's really an interesting character because she's like 80 years old. I mean, or more, or more. And she's smoking these like thin cigars that were popular at the time. And she is going undercover for the World Ecology Authority.
Yeah.
And into this dangerous situation and ferrying messages in and out and scoping out, you know, what's going on in the estate and everything. And it's completely unrealistic, but I just love this octogenarian Jane Bond lady.
She is great.
Well, I love it where Sarah Jane kind of pulls her aside. Sarah Jane's hiding, kind of pulls her aside. Let them know. Let the World Ecology Forum know and all this. And it's like, oh yeah, that's going to end well. And next scene is Ducat getting into the car with them, and like, oh yeah, I already knew about all this.
Right. Well, and then there's the other character that's in the car, which is Duncan, who is the
trader.
World Ecology Bureau trader. Right. He was selling the seed pods to Chase, and then, like Scorby, eventually realizes Chase is cuckoo pants, and he has remorse for what he's done, and tries to undo it. You know, he tries to go in and undo the damage, and eventually gets killed by the crinoid because he does the classic horror movie trope of, I'm running away. Oh no, I've fallen. And I'm not going to get to my feet and keep running away from this shambling horror. I'm going to lay on the ground and try to shoot at it with the gun.
Which he's already shot at it with and knows is ineffective.
Yeah. Yes. They you can tell they tried to act it where like his leg got caught on a tentacle of the crinoid or something like that. Of course, you don't see it on screen because they don't actually have a tentacle there for him to get caught on. But
Right. There are a couple of sort of off-screen horrible deaths that happen here. Duncan, where he gets consumed by the crinoid, but then
most
the
horrible
sergeant
one. Yeah. They have this unit sergeant who's with them for a while, and Chase in the country manor has this monstrously huge composting machine it's got these rollers that fit together and will totally disintegrate or rip apart anything that goes through them for the composting process. And he's built it big enough to accommodate a human being. Which is what then proceeds to happen. And they start to use it on the Doctor, and Sarah rescues him. And then later he's starting to use it on Sarah, and the Doctor rescues her. But then Chase uses it on this helpless unit sergeant, and there's no one there to rescue him. And off camera, he gets mulched. Yes. And then finally, this is how Chase himself meets his end, because he and the Doctor are wrestling in front of this thing, and Sarah helps the Doctor out, and the Doctor is trying to pull Chase out, but can't. And so Chase gets mulched, and barely off screen. There should have been blood splatter everywhere.
Yeah.
And the Doctor is amazed, because at this point Chase has gone over to the side of the plants, and the Doctor is like, he was trying to pull me in. Ooh, how creepy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Chase got his witch. He's part of the plants now.
I was gonna say it's a poetic end for Chase, because he's mulched. He's fed to his garden. So another interesting aspect is the Keeler crinoid gets massive. Like, it gets as large as the Doctor says, as large as St. Paul's Cathedral. I mean, it is truly a massive thing that it ends up growing into very rapidly, I have to say. Yeah. And it can speak. It eventually gets it's sentient. It has the ability to speak. It says, it tells him it wants the Doctor and will spare the others if the Doctor comes out and sacrifices himself. And Sarah Jane points out, well, obviously it wants the Doctor because it knows the Doctor knows about it and is the most effective defense against it. But Scorby's, kind of being an idiot about it. Like, well, you go sacrifice yourself to save us. And it, of course, doesn't happen.
This scene doesn't make a huge amount of sense, because on the one hand, it's like, send the Doctor out to us, and the Doctor then asks Scorby to make a Molotov cocktail to use as a distraction so they can all sneak away.
Right.
But then he's like, okay, so if the crinoid follows me, you guys do this. And it's like he's running off in a different direction, and they don't really use the Molotov cocktail to sneak away. They just throw it at the crinoid. It blows up. It's a big nothing.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor seems to sort of intentionally lead the crinoid away while everyone else escapes, and the Doctor is the real distraction. I wondered if this was a script editing issue.
Right, because he's doing exactly that. He went outside, like it asked, and ran, which he wouldn't need the Molotov cocktail to do.
Yeah.
They could have just done that. Yeah, that's true. So in the end, the crinoid is destroyed before it can germinate.
Barely.
Within minutes. They had 15 minutes to do the strike, and they get it done in time.
Always the timekeeper. One of the other things that we mentioned, like what this episode's like the thing, like the H.P. Lovecrafting. The other one, it was like, do you guys either see the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Don't bother. It's a terrible movie. But it is one where the plants of the earth defend themselves against humanity by driving people insane with like poisoned pollen and making us, commit suicide, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Excuse us. We can't all be autotrophs.
That's right. It reminds me, like, it wasn't just a 70s thing, but it is a constant repeating trope of the idea of the earth defending itself against humanity. Although in this case, it's not really the earth, it's an alien plant, but similar ideas. So, any last notes about this episode, Father Cory?
I have to admit, instead of the seeds of doom, I prefer the seeds of barley and the flowers of hops. I prefer what that produces instead.
That's right. How about you, Jimmy?
So this is from Doctor Who's Gothic horror period, and I liked how I have in my notes that I took this note in the Antarctic base part of it, but I said not a lot of razzle dazzle, but it's effective, horror. I thought the horror was effective in this, including the plant-based body horror, as we have these guys who are transforming into crinoids.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not look like a pleasant experience, like especially the first guy who we spend more time with during his transformation. It's like he's awake and unable to move and knows what's happening to him and can't do anything about it and can't even scream. And it's like, wow, that is pretty creepy.
Yeah.
I have the Doctor has an understated but interesting performance, and as usual, Tom Baker is doing some of his patented, I think, ad libs on some things. I'm sure some of this was written, but I don't know that all of it was. When he gets to the Antarctic base, they've heard this doctor is coming. And Tom Baker at the time was, I don't know, in his late 30s, early 40s. Mm-hmm. And so the scientist at the base says, "Oh, we were expecting someone older." And the doctor says, "I'm only 749. I used to be younger." And then he's at one point he's like standing in front of a guy who's turning into a crinoid, and he's standing at the bedside looking at the guy in the bed when Scorby comes into the room behind him and says, "Turn around." And the doctor turns around 360 degrees and looks back at the guy in the bed, and Scorby says, "Turn around facing this way." There's also a nice bit where the Doctor and Sarah are sneaking into the country manor, or pile, as they say, and Scorby confronts them, and the Doctor talks to Sarah Jane and says, "Hold on, get our hands up." and then when some additional goons arrive, and so he's speaking for Scorby. And then when some additional goons arrive, he speaks for Scorby again and says, "Grab us, we're very dangerous individuals." and then when they've taken him to Chase, and Chase is like indicated he's going to execute them, Sarah Jane is like, "Can't you do something other than execute us?" And the Doctor is saying, "Be reasonable, Sarah. What choice does he have? We keep interfering." So some really nice stuff on that front. Tom Baker, like I said, gets to punch out a couple of guys and call in an airstrike at the end. I'm not kidding. Yeah. The third Doctor is spinning in his grave. His successor is calling in unit airstrikes to solve problems. But Tom Baker also, at one point, when they're being chased around the country estate, he does snap Scorby's neck. Yeah. And I mean, he grabs Scorby's head and yanks it around, twists it around rapidly, and there is a loud snap in the soundtrack. It even says "loud snap" in the closed captioning. And so I thought the Doctor has just killed Scorby. And no, Scorby gets up and like rubs his neck and he's fine. So I guess he gave him a chiropractic adjustment on the fly. But wow, I mean, that seems like intent to kill to me.
Yeah. Not
intent to adjust. Also, there's some kind of foolish stuff. Like I mentioned, the taking people's guns, away from them when you've got the upper hand, so to speak. Also, at one point, Dunbar, the traitor from the World Ecology Authority, who has realized how badly things are going, he's like telling Chase, "I'm going to go call the police. I'm going to leave the estate and go call the police." And it's like, if you're going to call the police on a Bond-style supervillain, which is what Chase is, do not tell him that's what you're going to do. So, no wonder he has a bad end. The crinoid attack on the house, because by this point it is enormous. It is bigger than the house. They do it by stop motion. And it's, for a television budget for stop motion, it's pretty good. Also, the intermediate stage crinoid costume, where it's still a human being in there, is repainted it's an Axon costume from the Claws of Axos from the Third Doctor, but they've painted it green. But you'll remember in that serial we had those weird looking red tentacle creatures that were doing stuff, and the same costume is just green now.
Okay.
In the Antarctic scenes, to make sure we knew it was Antarctica, they posed an unrealistic snowing effect over the exterior shots, and they used a lot of styrofoam snow.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that, though, because, 70s children's television, it's fine with me. Sarah Jane also gets a good line when she's talking to Chase after he's decided he's a plant. And he's describing how it's going to be this beautiful silent world once all the animals are dead. And she says, and you'll all flower happily ever after. At the end of the very end of the episode, after the main story is resolved, they're back in the ecology headquarters place, which has more than one copy of Gone with the Wind on the shelf. And the Doctor and Sarah are going to go to the TARDIS and leave and go to
Cassiopeia.
Cassiopeia, yeah. And for a vacation. And the Doctor invites Sir Colin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, companion invitation. And not from someone you would expect. He's this elderly guy. But he says he's got to get home to the wife with dinner. And unlike will happen in the future, it's like, hello, time machine.
Yeah.
Right. Also, this is the last, if you've noticed, and I've noticed this for quite some time, in this period of Doctor Who, the TARDIS looks, the exterior of the TARDIS looks ratty.
Yeah.
And it's like, why haven't they like repainted this and or rebuilt a new prop or something like that? This is the last use of this TARDIS prop, which afterwards fell on Elizabeth Sladen and Tom Baker.
Oh.
Because it was so rickety at this point.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And then they end up somewhere that is not Cassiopeia, and they have this line at the end. The Doctor says, have we been here before? And he and Sarah Jane together say, or are we yet to come? Ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
And that's the final end. And okay, I guess we could use the clarinet of humor on that one.
Yeah, it's like it's supposedly Antarctica, but
they're back in
Antarctica. Yeah.
You know, I was thinking as you were talking about your notes that there has been a lot of episodes of, it's in the Fourth Doctor so far, British country manners.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just keep good Pyramid of Mars, like just over and over again.
They're the new rock quarry.
Yes, they are. I mean, I suppose if you're doing, Gothic horror, that's where it happens at British Country Manners.
Well, and there were a few that the BBC had access to on a regular basis for the purpose of filming. I mean, that they had agreements that they could use, so they would show up in many, many different shows. Like I'm sure this one showed up in many other shows at the same time because they had an ability to use them for the purposes of filming.
That's right. That's true. All right, I think that does it for this discussion of the Seeds of Doom. Before we go, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at Starquest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And of course, we'd like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So what did you think of the Seeds of Doom? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 11th Doctor story, Hyde. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you. I wasn't sure for a second if Hyde was a command or not, but okay.
Come back out, Jimmy. Come back out. Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on Starquest. And remember, waffle, waffle, waffle. Hi, everyone. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of Starquest, with a special message as we approach the Christmas season. This past year, the Starquest Network has continued to expand our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture through our many entertaining and informative programs. Now we need your generous financial support to reach new audiences with more of the life-changing and uplifting programming we've been creating for more than a decade. That's why it's very important that we hear from you this Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits receive most of their support for the year. If you are already a supporter of Starquest, we thank you and ask you to prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. If you're not yet a supporter, please become one now. Every gift counts. Could you give $15 or even just $10 per month? Whatever level of support you can offer, please show your support for SQPN this Christmas. And remember that your gifts may be tax deductible. Just go to sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. May God bless you this Advent, and may you have a blessed Christmas season.